Math Heaven time. As you will have heard, there is a beautiful sweep of lyricism, image, and kind of visionary tone that Mandy is able to achieve in her work. So thank you very much for that. In the classic West Coast poetic style, perhaps a bit of Gary Snyder there. Would it be fair to say that?
I'll take it.
We'll take a little bit of Gary Snyder. Okay. He's great ego poet. So, one last poet to read, which is wonderful. Not because it's good to get rid of them, but it's just lovely to be understanding and you haven't had a glass of water or wine in quite some time. Please do stick around, because after our last poet is read, all of the poets here this evening who are here will be signing their books, of course. Please do support Eyewear. Small press, independent publishing requires people to buy the books, not just to love them, but to support this as much as possible. And do support this wonderful bookshop. Bookshops too, independent bookshops like this is so vital to our society, to our culture. So thank you for coming out tonight and do support the poets. I should just say that we have another book that unfortunately the poet was too ill to travel from Portland. Another American poet, a great American poet as well, Floyd Skloot. This is his new book, Close Reading. It's an extraordinary book. He is the father of Rebecca Skloot, who's written the book about Henrietta Lacks. You might have read that book. It's a New York Times bestseller. But Floyd Skloot has written a number of books, and this is a kind of it's a late style work. He's an older poet now, and it's a book that looks back on his life, the writers and the artists that have influenced him. And what makes the work so fascinating is that Floyd Skloot, as those of you who know about his work will know, is suffered brain damage about 30 years ago. And so he writes extremely slowly and with a great deal of challenge to his vocabulary. But he's managed to continue to write, and his work often explores the different ways that poetry can grasp, can apprehend the world when language cannot quite. He can't always get the words that he wants on the tip of his tongue, but of course as a poet that means other words that come unbidden he can use instead. So it's an extraordinary collection for that reason. Now, the final poet who is reading tonight, who is here, is SJ Fowler. And you know, we were talking about names and titles. I think this probably, I don't know, hurt anyone else's feelings, but this is, I'm not going to say it's the best title of all time, but it's a very good poetry title. It is, The Rottweiler's Guide to the Dog Owner. And we're very pleased with how the design has come out. Someone ruefully said maybe millions of copies will be sold by people just because of the title. Well, that would be wonderful, but actually I would like people to read the poetry as well. There's a scene in Citizen Kane. I'm not grandiose in comparing myself to Charles Foster Kane, but he was also a publisher. But anyway, Charles Foster Kane famously at one point is standing beside a photograph, and he says, these are all of the great writers for my rival newspaper. And suddenly there's a flash, and he moves away, and you see that they're actually all living and sitting right there. And he says, and now they all work for me. And he kind of chuckles. But what I mean by that, and it's not meant to be grandiose, is that when I started my publishing company, I made a list of people who I definitely wanted to publish, because it's a labor of love. You'd have to be insane to publish poetry that you didn't believe in, that you didn't love. I have found SJ Fowler's work, as rebarbative as it is at times, as shocking, as fragmentary, as disturbing, as angry, as culturally relevant as it is. It's just the poetry that you cannot ignore. As George Surtees says in his description on the back, this is, or somewhere in there. I know there's Sam Riviere, somewhere there's George Surtees, but the main point is, this is a poet who is necessary for our time, and I'm thrilled that, I know he publishes with a lot of different presses, but I'm thrilled that Eyewear got the opportunity to publish this thrilling young British avant-garde writer who really knows as much about contemporary poetry as anyone alive today. Please welcome SJ Fowler.
You're really welcome to come in during my reading. Your son's voice is lovely.
Aww.
Is that the Pat the Dog animal? The villain show.
The most delightful thing in the world. It's very welcome. The book has been beautifully produced, so thank you, Edward. I'm just going to read one sequence. It's about the Ukraine, and it's called Wolves in Chernobyl. April 26th, 1986. But even apart from our wood, I do not know how one should say things in the dark have colour. Will the wise do things that are forbidden, knowing it won't be found out? A simple answer isn't easy to find. But freedom from trouble in the thing and from pain in the thing are still in the pleasure. But joy in the thing and exaltation are considered, involving motion. All the day, life in the town goes on as normal. Families shop and walk their dogs. Fishermen lug their tackle off to the Pripyat River. Couples sunbathe around the cooling ponds. Football matches go ahead, as do 16 outdoor weddings sponsored by the Communist Youth League. How can an object be good if it withdraws the pleasures of taste, retreat for the Caribbean, withdraws the pleasures of love, and withdraws the pleasures of hearing, the call of the button, and withdraws the pleasurable emotions called to sight by beautiful form? Yet it can be good, giving, living in the goodness of our wood, by stable condition, by well-being, by the sure hope of its continuous Kiev. It was good, rightly calculated. Do not eat green vegetables or milk. The nature of the universe is things and void. The nature of all existing things is body and space. The nature of all space is things and colour. If you wish to make me wealthy, wish me not to make me glow, but diminish my desire. Yet do not extinguish my desire. Allow me just enough left that I may not preach of being worn and without desire and above my peers, but happy in the clutching of a ball, or an artist's postcard, or a parent's plot of land. I hold in my hand my most precious object, one's own pickled, cancerous appendix. I am thrilled with pleasure in the thing's body. I spit black spit on clear glass that is not somehow opaque, or how we say, frosted, not for its own sake, ancient armour that blocks waves because of the inconveniences that follow them. With protection, we may have a feast. The schools debated whether or not to go ahead with a planned health run and settle instead on outdoor gymnastics. This is not anxious to please the mob, for what pleases them it does not know, and what it does not know is far removed from their comprehension. It knows that when flesh cries aloud, not possessing flesh, it is unnatural that the mind should cry aloud too. A silent stomach communicates in sweeping thoughts. It is better to be a thing of wool and rag that provokes freedom from fear than a golden couch that brings trouble and woe. Sweet is the simple memory of a dead thing, a friend, a flag, and how one would not mind so much the joining of you both. More firemen came up, complaining of vomiting and acute headaches. If this wooden thing listened to the prayers of all men would have quickly perished, for they are forever praying death against one another. If the prayers of women were to come true, of this I cannot speak, not knowing not. A foal had been born with 8 legs, piglets without eyes, calves without heads or ribs, deformities due to inbreeding. Vain is the thing that does not heal suffering in man, for there is nothing new happening in the universe. The warp closes like a mouth always ready for opening. If we consider the infinite time past, and thus there is no excuse for distractions, dumb things are for drowning, thus the sea is deep. Helped us understand we are a colony. Thanks.